Close your eyes and let the frantic rhythm of the world fall away like heavy dust-laden garments. You have spent your life in the marketplace of noise, bartering your life force for the hollow promise of more, believing that if you only pushed harder, ran faster, and shouted louder, the universe would finally hear your plea. But the universe is not moved by the desperate. It is moved by the deep. You are here because the hustle has failed you. It has left your spirit parched even as your hands grew calloused. You have sensed, in the quiet hours of the night, that there is a wealth which requires no sweat, a prosperity that does not demand the sacrifice of your peace. This is the law of silent abundance. It is not a prize to be won. It is a frequency to be inhabited. In this sacred space, we do not seek, we recognize. We do not build, we reveal. You are the sole initiate of this moment, and the words spoken here are intended for no ears but yours. Let them sink into the marrow of your being, bypassing the analytical mind that has kept you a prisoner of effort. Once, in a land where the sun turned the soil to cracked porcelain, there lived a traveler known as the Seeker. He spent his years wandering the canyons, his throat raw from screaming into the void for water. "Give me sustenance," he would cry, and the canyon would mock him, returning only the echo of his own thirst. He dug with bleeding fingernails into the dry earth, finding only heat and stone. Exhausted, the Seeker collapsed into the shadow of a great, silent monolith. He ceased his digging, he ceased his shouting, he simply sat, his breath becoming one with the stillness of the rocks. In that absolute cessation of movement, a miracle occurred. Through the soles of his feet, he felt a faint, rhythmic pulse, the heartbeat of the earth. He pressed his ear to the sand and heard it, the low, resonant hum of an ancient, subterranean river flowing miles beneath the surface. It had always been there, waiting not for his effort, but for his silence. He did not need to scream. He needed to listen. He did not need to dig. He needed to sink. This is the threshold of your transformation. To enter the law of silent abundance, you must first commit the most radical act of all. You must stop trying to be rich. True prosperity is a private, internal state that the world can neither give nor take away. It is a secret you keep with the divine. When you proclaim your desires to the wind, you scatter the very energy required to manifest them. When you brag of your gains, you invite the shadow of others like to dim your light. Here, we cultivate the hushed gold, the wealth that grows in the dark, nourished by the steady, unmoving conviction of your own worth. Prepare your spirit. We are descending into the cool, quiet depths where the subterranean river flows. The silent practice, the anchoring of the breath. Sit now in a position of sovereign ease. Do not strain. Feel the weight of your body as a mountain feels its own gravity. As you inhale, imagine you are drawing light upward from the center of the earth, through the soles of your feet, and into the hollow of your chest. This is the inhalation of substance. Hold that breath for a count of 3, feeling the fullness of it. You lack nothing. The air is a gift you did not have to earn. As you exhale, whisper the word enough internally, not as a plea, but as a decree. Let the breath leave you without grasping, knowing with absolute certainty that the next one is already provided for. Repeat this 3 times. You are signaling to your nervous system that the era of the striver is over. The era of the owner has begun. Chapter 1. The Architecture of the Void. The world of the uninitiated is a world of frantic accumulation. They believe that to be full, they must grasp, that to be wealthy, they must stack stone upon stone until the tower reaches the clouds. But you, who have stepped into the shadow of the monolith, must learn the first secret of the silent abundance, the architecture of the void. To receive the infinite, you must first provide it with a home. Most souls are so cluttered with the debris of their own striving, the jagged shards of old anxieties, the heavy furniture of how-to manuals, and the suffocating dust of social expectation, that there is no room for the great wealth to sit down. You cannot pour wine into a cup already brimming with stagnant water. You cannot invite a king to dine in a pantry overflowing with rot. True abundance is not a guest that pushes its way through a crowd. It is a presence that fills a vacuum. It is the nature of the universe to abhor a void. Therefore, when you consciously create a space of absolute, expectant emptiness, The law of substance must, by its very nature, rush in to fill it. This is not a physical cleaning alone, though the physical world is the shadow of the spirit. This is a metaphysical clearing. It is the art of becoming nothing, so that you may possess all things. Deep within the shifting sands of the great eastern barrens, there lived a figure known only as the potter of nothing. While other artisans in the capital vied for the attention of the court by encrusting their jars with jewels and painting their bowls with the histories of fallen empires, the potter lived in a hut of sun-dried mud, working only by the light of the waning moon. His hands did not seek to impose a shape upon the clay. Rather, he spoke to the clay, coaxing it to stretch thinner and thinner, until the walls of his vessels were so translucent they seemed made of solidified breath. One day, a wealthy merchant, bloated with the pride of his many caravans, came to the potter's hut. He looked at the fragile, pale bowls and laughed. "Old man," the merchant sneered, "your work is useless. These walls are so thin they could not hold a handful of iron coins without shattering. Why do you waste your life making vessels that are almost invisible?" The potter did not look up from his wheel. He waited until the spinning clay reached a point of perfect, silent equilibrium. "You look at the walls of the bowl and see weakness," the potter whispered. "I look at the space inside the bowl and see the only thing of value. A bowl of thick clay and heavy jewels is already full of itself. It can hold nothing. My bowls are so thin they are nearly gone, and, because they are nearly gone, they can hold the entire sky. The value of the vessel is not the clay. The value is the emptiness it protects." The merchant left, his pockets heavy with gold that weighed him down, while the potter sat in his hut, his empty bowls catching the silver light of the stars alight. The merchant was too burdened to ever see. You must become the potter's bowl. You must examine the walls of your own identity, those thick, heavy beliefs that you are a person who works hard, a person who struggles, or even a person who is trying to manifest wealth. These identities are the thick clay that leaves no room for the spirit of abundance. When you tell the world you are grinding or hustling, you are thickening the walls of your vessel. You are announcing that your space is already occupied by effort. And where effort lives, grace cannot enter. Grace is a shy inhabitant. It only resides where it is not crowded by the ego's frantic attempts to do the work of the divine. The architecture of the void requires you to look at your life and ask, what am I holding on to simply because I am afraid of the silence that would remain if I let it go? This applies to your physical sanctuary. Yes, a desk piled with unpaid bills is a shrine to the god of lack. A closet filled with garments you no longer wear is a confession that you do not trust the future to clothe you. But more deeply, it applies to your internal sanctuary. You must clear the mental furniture of your plans. The how is the enemy of the is. When you obsess over the mechanics of how wealth will reach youth through which job, which investment, which lucky break, you are building a very small, very rigid pipe. You are telling the universe, you may only bless me through this narrow opening. By doing so, you have cluttered the void. You have filled your architecture with the blueprints of your own limited understanding. To practice the law of silent abundance, you must tear down the blueprints. You must stand in the center of your life and say, with the authority of a sovereign, I do not know how it comes. I only know that it is here, because I have made room for it. The silent practice, the clearing of the inner chamber. Tonight, before the sun has fully surrendered to the moon, find a place where you can be undisturbed. This is your ceremony of the vacant seat. Close your eyes and visualize your heart space, not as a muscle of flesh, but as a vast, high-ceilinged temple. Observe the clutter within it. See the crates labeled future worries, the heavy tapestries of past failures, and the flickering, noisy candles of social validation. In your mind's eye, begin to move these items out. Do not throw them with anger. Simply place them outside the temple doors. See the floor of the temple white marble, cool and pristine, revealed as you clear the space. Continue until the temple is entirely empty. No furniture, no light, no sound. Only the vast, echoing architecture of the void. Now, place a single, empty golden chair in the center of this vast room. This chair is not for you. It is the seat of the unseen provider. As you sit in the physical world, Hold the image of that empty golden chair in your internal temple. Feel the silence of that room. It is a pregnant silence. It is the silence of a womb before life begins. Do not ask for money. Do not ask for gold. Simply feel the readiness of the room. Say to yourself, in a voice that does not rise above a breath, the house is ready. The guest may enter. Stay in this state for 7 minutes. If a thought of work or to-do enters, see it as a stray piece of litter blowing across your marble floor. Gently sweep it out. When you open your eyes, do not immediately rush to your phone or your tasks. Walk through your home as if you are a guest in a palace. If you see clutter, remove it. If you see something broken, fix it or discard it. You are no longer cleaning. You are consecrating the space for the abundance that is already on its way to fill the void you have so bravely created. Keep this void a secret. Do not tell your spouse, your friend, or your partner that you are making room. If they ask why you are quiet, or why you have cleared the shelves, simply smile. The potter does not explain the bowl to the merchant. He simply lets the bowl hold the sky. Chapter 2. Mirror Alchemy. The secret of the initiate is the realization that the eyes do not perceive the world. They project it. To the unawakened, the market, the economy, and the balance sheet are cold. External monoliths, monsters of stone that must be appeased or conquered through the sweat of the brow. But to you, who stands in the quietude of the architecture, these are merely the silvered glass of a vast, cosmic mirror. Mirror alchemy is the ancient understanding that the external reality you navigate is a delayed reflection of your internal posture. If you approach the mirror of life with the face of a beggar, contracted, fearful, and smelling of the dust of trying, the mirror has no choice but to reflect a world of scarcity, high walls, and closed doors. You may scream at the reflection to change. You may polish the glass with the frantic cloth of hustle. But the image will only shift when the source of the light, the you behind the eye, shifts its stance. Wealth is not something you get. It is something you are, which the world then confirms. The alchemist does not look for gold in the hills. He finds the frequency of gold within his own blood, and suddenly, the hills offer up their veins to him. This is the law of the reflection. If you feel the pinch of lack, you are merely seeing a ghost of a past thought. Do not fight the ghost. Change the face in the mirror. In the heart of a city that has long since passed into myth, there stood the hall of the blind king. The king was not born without sight. Yet he lived in a world of absolute, suffocating darkness. He sat upon a throne of cold iron, wrapped in furs, shivering even in the height of summer. He cursed his architects for building a palace without windows. He cursed his servants for failing to light the torches. He cursed the sun itself for abandoning his kingdom. Bring me the sun, he would roar into the blackness. Bring me the warmth of the gold I own, for I am the richest man in the world, and yet I sit in a tomb. One evening, a wandering sage, a woman who carried only a small, handheld mirror of polished bronze, was brought before him. She heard the king's lamentations and his bitter commands for more light, more fire, more effort from his guards. "Great king," she whispered, her voice like the shifting of silk, "the sun has never left this hall. The torches are all lit. The gold in your vaults is glowing with such intensity that it blinds the birds in the courtyard." "You lie," the king screamed, reaching out to strike the air. "It is pitch. It is cold. I feel the shadows pressing against my skin." The sage did not argue. She stepped forward and placed her hand upon the king's brow. With a gentle, firm motion, she unraveled a thin silken thread that had been wound around his head 1,000 times, a blindfold of his own weaving, so fine and so old he had forgotten he was wearing it. As the final layer fell away, the king gasped. The hall was indeed flooded with light. The mirrors on the walls were catching the evening sun, multiplying its glory until the very air seemed to be made of liquid amber. "The darkness was not in the room," the sage said, holding her bronze mirror up to his face. "The darkness was the garment you chose to wear. You were staring at the inside of your own fear and calling it the world. You, too, have been wearing the blindfold of the striver. You have looked at your bank account, your debts, and your perceived failures, and you have called them the truth. They are not the truth. They are the inside of your blindfold. When you look at a bill and feel a tightening in your solar plexus, You are projecting poverty onto the mirror. The mirror, being faithful, reflects back more reasons to feel that tightening. This is the loop of the uninitiated. To break it, you must practice the alchemy of the mirror. You must look at the lack and refuse to give it the nourishment of your belief in the law of silent abundance. We do not ignore the external world, we simply strip it of its authority. We recognize that the figures on a screen or the paper in a ledger are mid-process. They are the dying echoes of an old internal state. To change them, you must turn your back on the mirror and go within to the source. You must begin to cultivate a private opulence. This has nothing to do with what you can afford today. It is a mental and spiritual fragrance. It is the way you hold your shoulders when you walk down a street. It is the way you touch a common piece of fruit as if it were a rare jewel. It is the refusal to speak the language of expensive, broke, or struggling. Those words are the silken threads of the blindfold. The alchemist knows that if they can maintain the feeling state of wealth in the face of apparent lack, the mirror must reorganize itself. It is a mathematical certainty of the spirit. The reflection cannot remain different from the object for long. But the secret is in the silence of this maintenance. If you brag about your abundance mindset while your pockets are empty, you are merely shouting at the mirror. You are admitting that you do not yet believe it. The true initiate holds the feeling in a sacred seclusion, allowing the internal pressure of their conviction to build until the external world cracks and gives way to the new light, the silent practice, the golden gaze. This practice is to be performed when you are alone, ideally before a physical mirror, though an internal one will suffice. Stand before the glass. Look at your reflection, but do not look at your features, your age, or your flaws. Look directly into the pupils of your eyes, the gateway to the void we discussed in the previous chapter. As you breathe slowly, begin to paint your reflection with the light of abundance. Do not think of money. Think of the quality of gold, its weight, its warmth, its unreactive nature. Imagine a golden mist rising from within you and coating your skin in the mirror. Now, perform the transmutation of the bill. Take a physical representation of a debt or a cost of bill, a digital notification, or even just the thought of a payment you must make. Hold it in your hand. Instead of the usual pinch of anxiety, look at it through your golden gaze. See the paper or the screen as a request for flow. It is not taking from you. It is an invitation for you to prove your infinite nature. Imagine that, as you touch this object, your golden frequency flows into it, turning the debt into seed store. Whisper to the reflection, I am the source. The mirror only follows. Do this until the physical sensation of fear in your body dissolves and is replaced by a cool, sovereign indifference. This indifference is the sign that the alchemy is working. When you no longer care what the mirror shows, the mirror is finally free to show you the truth. Carry this golden gaze into your day. When you see someone driving a fine carriage or wearing a beautiful cloak, do not look with envy. Envy is a confession that you do not have. Instead, look at their wealth and say internally, look at how beautifully I am reflecting today. Claim their success as a symptom of your own rising frequency. By doing so, you pull the reflection closer to your own skin. Chapter 3. The Invisible Act. There is a leak in the soul of the modern world. It is a leak caused by the constant, frantic need to be witnessed. The uninitiated believe that if a deed is not seen, it has no power. They believe that if a success is not broadcast, it hasn't truly occurred. They post their dreams, they announce their intentions, and they display their charity like banners on a battlefield. In doing so, they bleed their vrilda, primordial, creative life force required to turn thought into substance. The invisible act is the principle of stealth. It is the understanding that the most potent forces in the universe are those that operate in total darkness. Consider the seed. It does not crack the earth and shout its progress to the sun. It remains buried, silent, and rotting in the cold soil, building the internal pressure of its own becoming until the breakthrough is inevitable. If you dig up the seed to show your neighbors how well it is growing, you kill the plant. To practice silent abundance, you must become an architect of the hidden. You must learn to perform acts of wealth, acts of power, and acts of giving that are known to no one but the divine and your own reflection. This secret cache of energy creates a psychic gravity. When you do not seek validation from the external world begins to seek validation from you. By refusing to be seen, you become a center of the universe around which all things must eventually orbit. In the ancient highlands, where the air is thin and the silence is as heavy as stone, there lived a community of trees, known to the mountain folk as the underground forest. To the casual traveler, these trees appeared stunted, scattered, and unremarkable. They did not tower like the redwoods of the coast. They did not bloom with the garish colors of the valley flora. However, beneath the frostbitten soil, these trees were engaged in a magnificent, invisible conspiracy. Their roots did not merely compete for moisture. They wove themselves into a singular, vast tapestry of intelligence. Through a complex network of fungal threads, the trees communicated in a language of chemical pulses. When one tree found a pocket of rich minerals, it did not hoard the strength to grow taller than its brothers. Instead, it sent the nutrients through the dark, damp earth to the sapling struggling in the shade of a cliff. When a drought parched the southern slope, the trees on the northern peak pumped their own water through the root veins to sustain the thirsty. One summer, a flashy, flowering vine migrated from the valley, clinging to the bark of the eldest tree. The vine grew with staggering speed, unfurling bright purple blossoms that screamed for the attention of the bees and the wind. "Look at me," the vine seemed to cry. "See how I thrive. See how much I have gained in but a week." The trees said nothing. They continued their silent, subterranean exchange. When the first great frost arrived, a cold so bitter it turned the breath to ice the flowering vine. Having spent all its energy on its external display, shriveled and turned to black ash in a single night. But the underground forest remained. It had no flowers to lose. Its wealth was safely stored where the frost could not reach in the warm, dark, silent belly of the earth. You are the tree. Your ambition is the root. Most people spend their lives trying to be the purple vine. They want the bloom of wealth, the car, the watch, the public title before they have even established the root system of the soul. They want the world to congratulate them on a journey they haven't finished. The law of silent abundance demands that you cultivate the secret hoard. This is not merely about money. It is about the vibration of having. When you feel the impulse to tell someone about a great deal you are closing, or a new habit you are forming, or a sum of money you have saved, stop. Feel the words rising in your throat, and then swallow them. Feel the heat of that information. That heat is power. When you speak it, the heat dissipates into the air, and you are left cold and empty. But when you keep it secret, that heat turns into pressure. It bakes the clay of your reality into a permanent form. The invisible act also extends to your interaction with the world's lack. If you wish to experience true abundance, you must perform stealth philanthropy. To give money and have your name etched in stone is not a spiritual act. It is a business transaction. You are buying importance. To give a coin to a stranger, or to leave an anonymous gift where it will be found by one in need, without ever revealing your hand, this is an act of mirror alchemy. In the silence of the anonymous gift, you are telling the universe, I have so much that I do not even need the credit for having it. This is the ultimate confession of wealth. It bypasses the ego and speaks directly to the fabric of reality, the universe. Seeing a being who gives like the sun without asking for a receipt, reciprocates by giving to that being in ways that are equally miraculous and unexpected. The silent practice, the alms of the ghost. This week, you are tasked with the performance of one invisible act of prosperity. It must be an act that leaves no trail back to your identity. The selection, choose a target for your abundance. It could be leaving a significant tip in a place where you will never return. It could be paying the debt of a stranger in secret. It could even be a non-monetary gift, such as performing a labor for someone while they sleep or are away, so they return to find the work done by nobody. The execution, perform the act with the grace of a phantom. Do not linger to see the look on their face. Do not wait for the thank you. The moment the gift leaves your hand, you must vanish. The containment, this is the most difficult part. You must never tell a single living soul about this act. Not your partner, not your journal, not even a confession to a spiritual teacher. It must remain a permanent secret between you and the void. The observation. Notice the feeling that arises in your chest in the days following. You will feel a strange, solid weight of power. This is the vril returning to you. Because the world did not pay you back with praise, the universe is now in your debt. When you walk through the marketplace, carry this secret act like a hidden jewel in your pocket. As you look at others, realize that you have a secret life of power that they cannot see. This internal knowing will change your posture, your voice, and your eyes. You will no longer look like someone who is seeking wealth. You will look like someone who is hiding it. And as we have learned, the mirror of the world loves to reveal what you are trying to keep hidden. Chapter 4. Protection from the external gaze. To walk the path of silent abundance is to carry a lit candle through a storm. The candle is your internal frequency, the fragile, glowing realization that you are already whole. The storm is the collective consciousness of the world, the external gaze. We live in a civilization that feeds on doubt, the structures of the marketplace, the rhythms of the news, and the casual conversations of your peers are all designed to reinforce one singular, devastating lie. You are not enough, and there is not enough. When you begin to shift your vibration toward the silent rain, you become a biological anomaly. You are a person who is no longer hungry in a world of starving ghosts. This creates a subtle, often unconscious friction. When you encounter others, they do not see your bank balance, but they feel your peace. And to the uninitiated, your peace is an indictment of their chaos. Without meaning to, they will attempt to ground you, to pull you back down into the shared reality of struggle, taxes, inflation, and the hard truth of the economy. They will offer you their common sense as if it were a gift, not realizing it is the leaden weight that keeps them drowning. Protection from the external gaze is the art of psychic insulation. It is the understanding that your internal reality is a laboratory where a delicate chemical reaction is taking place. If you allow the breath of the fearful to blow upon your crucibles, the experiment will fail. You must learn to move through the world while remaining fundamentally elsewhere. In the age of the great alchemists, there was a man who had discovered the secret of the aurum solis, the gold of the sun. Unlike his peers, who worked in grand laboratories funded by princes, this alchemist worked in a small room at the edge of the city's busiest square. The square was a cacophony of commerce. Merchants screamed their prices, beggars wailed for alms, and the city crier constantly shouted news of impending wars and failing harvests. Any other man would have been driven mad by the noise, or worse, seduced into the anxiety of the crowd. However, the alchemist had constructed a room of a most peculiar design. The walls were lined with thick plates of refined lead, but between the lead and the stone, there was a layer of absolute vacuum. Not a single vibration from the street could penetrate the chamber. More importantly, he had crafted a window of one-way glass. From the outside, the window appeared to be a dull, dark mirror. The people in the square saw only their own frantic faces reflected back at them. From the inside, the alchemist could see everything, yet he remained entirely unseen. One day, a young apprentice asked him, "Master, why do you hide? Surely, if you showed the people the gold you have made, they would stop their screaming and believe." The alchemist stirred his glowing potion, his face calm and radiant. "If I opened the door," he whispered, "their belief would not save them, but their doubt would destroy the gold. Gold, in its liquid state, is sensitive to the vibration of lack. If a man who fears hunger looks upon this crucible, the gold will turn back into lead to match his expectation. I do not hide to protect myself from them. I hide to protect the work from their eyes. You are the alchemist, and your life is the lead room. Your work is the cultivation of the feeling of abundance. Every time you explain your dreams to someone who is still trapped in the hustle, you are opening the door to the marketplace. You are allowing the vibration of lack to look into your crucible. Have you noticed how, after sharing a brilliant idea with a friend, the idea suddenly feels cold and heavy? Have you noticed how, after telling someone about a windfall of money, you suddenly feel a strange urge to spend it or a fear that it will disappear? This is the external gaze at work. Their unconscious doubt acts as a corrosive. To protect yourself, You must adopt the mask of the ordinary. This is a ceremonial deception. You must learn to speak the language of the world without believing a word of it. When others complain about the cost of living, you may nod in polite silence. You do not need to correct them. You do not need to boast of your secret river. To do so would be to invite their psychic interference. You must look, act, and speak in a way that allows you to pass through the world unnoticed, while internally you are draped in the silks of a sovereign. This protection also requires you to curate your psychic intake. In the year 2026, the gaze is not just in the eyes of your neighbors, it is in the device in your pocket. The digital world is a concentrated stream of not enoughness. Every notification is a pebble thrown into your still pond. To protect the frequency, you must be ruthless. If a voice, be it a person or a screen, does not speak the language of the law of silent abundance, it must be granted no entry into your lead room. The silent practice, the cloak of Mercury. This practice is designed to be used when you must enter the square, any environment where the vibration of struggle is high, such as a workplace, a crowded store, or a family gathering where money talk is prevalent. The visualization. Before you enter the space, stand for a moment in silence. Imagine a thin, shimmering skin of liquid mercury rising from the ground and covering your entire body. Mercury is the metal of the gods. It is fluid, reflective, and impossible to grasp. The mirroring. See this mercury cloak as a one-way mirror. Imagine that every fearful word, every complaint about the economy, and every envious look from others hits the surface of your cloak and is instantly reflected back to the sender. It does not touch your skin. It does not enter your ears. The internal mantra. While you are in the environment, if someone speaks to you of lack, do not argue. Internally, repeat the phrase, "That is your mirror. This is my light." 4. The exit. When you leave the environment, imagine the mercury cloak sliding off your body and dissolving into the earth, carrying away any static that may have clung to the surface. You will find that, by using the cloak of Mercury, you can be in the world of hustle without being of it. You will find that people begin to sense a distance in you, not a coldness, but a sovereign detachment. They will stop bringing their complaints to you. They will stop asking you to join in their rituals of worry. You have become the lead room. You have become the one-way glass. In the safety of this protection, your liquid gold can finally settle into a solid, permanent form. Chapter 5. The weight of gold. To the uninitiated, the dream of abundance is a dream of lightness, a shimmering fantasy of freedom where all burdens vanish and every whim is satisfied by the stroke of a pen. They chase the feeling of gold without understanding the gravity of it. They do not realize that wealth is a physical and metaphysical pressure. In the hidden histories of the spirit, gold was never valued for its shine alone. It was valued for its density. To possess it is to carry a weight. Many who have practiced the arts of manifestation find that when the floodgates finally open, they are swept away by the current. Their nervous systems, tuned for decades to the high-pitched frequency of struggle, cannot harmonize with the low, heavy thrum of having. This is why the lottery winner often finds himself in ruin within a cycle of 7 years. And why the hustler who finally strikes it rich often collapses into illness or madness. They had the desire for the gold, but they did not have the whole to carry the weight. The weight of gold is the principle of somatic capacity. It is the training of the body and the mind to remain unruffled by the presence of large-scale substance. To the law of silent abundance, 1,000,000 is no different from 100, yet to the human heart, the difference can be a crushing tide of anxiety. You must learn to be heavy. You must develop the spiritual mass that allows wealth to sit upon you like a crown, rather than a millstone. In the ancient maritime city of Oros, there was a captain known as the Silent Mariner. While other captains boasted of the speed of their clipper ships, built of light cedar that could skim the waves like dragonflies, the mariner sailed a vessel of dark, ancient oak named the Anchor's Grace. Its hull was reinforced with bands of iron, and it sat deeper in the water than any other craft in the harbor. One autumn, a massive migration of the golden-scaled tuna entered the bay, a harvest so great it was said a man could walk across the water on their backs. Every boat in Oros rushed to the sea. The light clippers arrived first, their nets bursting with the shimmering, heavy fish. The crews cheered, piling the gold-scaled harvest higher and higher. But as the sun began to set, the wind turned. The weight of the catch, which had seemed like a blessing in the calm, now became a death sentence. The light ships, built for speed and seeking, could not handle the having. One by one, their hulls groaned and snapped, spilling their treasure and their men into the dark maw of the deep. The silent mariner arrived last. He did not rush. He moved with a slow, deliberate gravity. When he cast his nets, he took only what his reinforced hull could support. As the storm broke, the anchor's grace did not toss or turn. Its weight was its protection. It sat so low and so steady that the waves simply washed over the deck, unable to move the mass beneath. He returned to the harbor the next morning, the only captain with his hull intact and his harvest secured. When the townspeople asked how he had survived the storm that claimed the faster ships, he replied, "The storm did not sink them. Their own fortune sank them. They spent their lives learning how to catch, but they never learned how to carry. You must reinforce your hull. If you are currently in a state of lack, do not view this as a punishment. View it as a season of strengthening. You are currently building the capacity to hold the weight that is coming. If you cannot hold $100 without the frantic urge to get rid of it, either through spending it to prove you have it, or clutching it in fear that you will lose it too, or telling the universe that your hull is too thin, you are signaling that you cannot handle the weight of gold. In the law of silent abundance, we practice the sovereign indifference. This is the ability to be in the presence of wealth, whether it is yours or another's, without the heart rate increasing. When you walk into a room of great opulence, does your breath become shallow? Do you feel like an intruder? That is the vibration of the clipper ship. It is the sign of a ship that will capsize when the real harvest arrives. To carry the weight of gold, you must cultivate a lead-bottomed soul. You must become so familiar with the feeling of large numbers, fine things, and vast possibilities that they no longer move you. This is why the hustle is so dangerous. It keeps the nervous system in a state of high cortisol, fight or flight. You cannot be wealthy in a state of flight. Wealth is a sit. It is a stationary, heavy, and silent power. The silent practice, the golden anchor. This ritual is designed to weight your nervous system, preparing you somatically for the arrival of substantial abundance. The physical weight. Find an object that is small, but surprisingly heavier. Lead fishing weight, a dense stone, or a piece of solid brass. Carry this in your pocket for an entire day. Every time you feel its weight against your thigh, do not think money. Think, I am heavy enough to hold. The digital desensitization. Open your banking application or ledger. Look at the balance. Now, in your mind's eye, add 4 zeros to the end of that number. Do not visualize what you would buy. That is a light thought. Instead, visualize the responsibility of that number. Feel the literal weight of it sitting in your bank, silent and unmoving. The breath of the mountain. Sit in your architecture of the void. Imagine that your hips and legs are made of solid gold, sinking deep into the bedrock of the earth. You are so heavy that no storm of the marketplace, no inflation, no recession, no bad news, could even cause your shoulders to twitch. The high-value exposure. Go to a place that represents a weight you are not yet used, to a high-end gallery, a luxury car showroom, or the lobby of a grand hotel. Do not go as a shopper or a dreamer. Go as an owner on an inspection. Walk through the space with a slow, heavy gait. Touch the surfaces. Feel the heaviness of the quality. Notice if your heart speeds up. If it does, stop, breathe, and sink your weight back into your golden hips until your pulse returns to a slow, rhythmic thud. By practicing this, you are thickening the walls of your vessel. You are telling the great provider, I am no longer a dragonfly. I am an anchor's grace. You may load me with the harvest. I will not sink. When you can stand in the presence of $1 million with the same board.com breath you use to stand in the presence of a loaf of bread, you have mastered the weight of gold. And once the weight is no longer a threat to your peace, the gold has no reason to stay away. Chapter 6. The language of the unspoken. To the uninitiated, language is a tool of declaration. They believe that by speaking their desires, they command them into existence. They fill their rooms with the noise of affirmations, shouting at the walls that they are successful, that they are wealthy, that they are powerful, But in the hushed courts of the law of silent abundance, we recognize this for what it truly is, a confession of absence. One does not stand in the rain and shout, "I am wet." One does not sit in the sun and scream, "There is light." The very act of affirming a thing through the spoken word often creates a psychic distance between the seeker and the sought. When you say, "I will be," you are simultaneously announcing, "I am not yet." The vibration of the spoken word is a coarse, physical disturbance. It is the hustle of the throat. The language of the unspoken is the shift from saying to assuming. It is the transition from mantra to mood. The most powerful decree in the universe is not a word at all. It is a feeling state, a quiet, undeniable frequency that resides in the marrow and the breath. This is the language the divine speaks. The great provider does not respond to the vocabulary of the dictionary. It responds to the vocabulary of the nervous system. To speak to the void, you must learn the dialect of the already done. In the heart of the silk market of Samarkand, amidst the roar of 1,000 tongues and the clatter of silver coins, there lived a figure known as the mute merchant. While other traders hired criers to scream the quality of their carpets and the rarity of their dyes, the mute merchant sat upon a simple platform of cedar, draped in a robe of unadorned gray wool. He never spoke, he never gestured, he never beckoned, yet his stall was the epicenter of the market's gravity. The wealthiest emirs and the most discerning travelers bypassed the shouting stalls to wait in a silent line before him. They did not come because of a sign he had hung or a promise he had whispered. They came because of the scent. The merchant spent his nights in a secret garden, tending to herbs and resins that were unknown to the world. He did not sell these herbs. He simply lived among them. The fragrance of ancient frankincense, rare oud, and 1,000-year-old rose had seeped into his very skin. When he sat in the marketplace, he did not need to speak of luxury or quality. He emanated it. The atmosphere around him was so thick with the frequency of excellence that a man standing 3 feet away would suddenly feel his own poverty dissolve. The merchant's silence was his greatest advertisement. By refusing to speak, he forced the world to feel. He knew that a word is a cage, but a fragrance is an invitation to infinity. He sold more silk in a day of silence than the loudest crier sold in a year of shouting. For he understood that the world does not follow the noise. It follows the scent of the real. You must become the mute merchant. You must cease the verbal hustle of trying to convince the universe and yourself that you are abundant. Every time you utter an affirmation from a place of wanting, you are merely broadcasting the scent of your own lack. You are telling the mirror that you are still standing on the outside, looking in. The language of the unspoken is found in the internal assumption. It is the way you hold your tongue against the roof of your mouth. It is the way you look at a luxury you cannot yet physically grasp, and instead of saying, "I want that," you feel the internal click of "I remember that." This is the art of preoccupying the state. To the law of silent abundance, time is not a line, but a fabric. Your future wealth is not a destination you are traveling toward. It is a frequency that exists in this very room, hidden by the noise of your current doubts. When you stop speaking of the wealth and begin to inhabit the scent of it, the fabric of time folds. The future wealth recognizes its own frequency in your current body and rushes to meet you. This language requires a radical guard of the mouth. You must stop talking about your financial goals. You must stop discussing the grind. You must even stop teaching these laws to those who haven't asked. To speak of these things is to evaporate the fragrance. The moment you put a spiritual experience into common words, you bring it down into the marketplace where it can be trampled by the common sense of others. Keep the scent on your skin. Keep the words in the void, the silent practice, the fragrance of the finished. This ritual is to be performed in the golden hour just before sleep, when the veil between the conscious mind and the void is thinnest. The sensory anchor, identify a scent or a physical sensation that represents the end result of your abundance. It is not the getting of the money, but the life that follows. Perhaps it is the scent of a specific wood in a library, the feel of high-thread count linen, or the heavy silence of a secluded garden. The internal assumption, lie still. Do not use words. Do not say, "I am wealthy." Instead, summon the feeling of that end result. Imagine that the bed you are lying in is already located in the house of your sovereign decree. Feel the air of that room. Notice how your breathing changes when there is nothing left to do and nowhere left to go. The mute decree. If a thought of how or when arises, do not fight it with a word. Simply return to the scent. Inhabit the state so completely that if someone were to walk into your room and wake you, you would be momentarily confused to find yourself in your current surroundings. The carryover. When you wake in the morning, do not speak for the first 10 minutes. Carry the scent of the night into your first cup of water. Move through your morning routine as the mute merchant. You are not looking for success today. You are simply emanating the fact that you have already found it. As you go about your day, if you encounter a moment of lack, do not counter it with a loud affirmation. Instead, press your tongue to the roof of your mouth and feel the secret fragrance of your internal reality. Remember, the crier is exhausted by noon. The mute merchant is refreshed by the very silence that makes him rich. Speak only when the words are more beautiful than the silence, and when it comes to your abundance, they never are. Chapter 7. The poverty of effort. In the temples of the marketplace, the highest deity is the grind. The uninitiated are taught from birth that the harvest is directly proportional to the sweat shed upon the soil. They believe in the mathematics of exhaustion, convinced that if they burn the candle at both ends, the light produced will somehow illuminate the path to gold. But in the hushed courts of the law of silent abundance, we see this for what it is, a tragic misunderstanding of the nature of the universe. The poverty of effort is the realization that frantic striving is not a tool of creation, but a symptom of fear. When you hustle, you are shouting at the void that you do not trust it to provide. You are attempting to take by force what can only be received through resonance. Hard work, as defined by the world, is often a confession of laka, desperate attempt to compensate for a vibration that is out of alignment with the source of all things. In the spiritual hierarchy, the striver is always a servant, while the receiver is always a sovereign. The universe does not reward the volume of your labor. It rewards the quality of your conviction. When you move from a place of must-do to a place of it is done, the very nature of action changes. It ceases to be a heavy lift and becomes a graceful flow. This is the law of least resistance. It is the understanding that the most powerful movements in the cosmos, the spinning of the planets, the rising of the tide, the blooming of the rose occur without a single ounce of effort. High upon the jagged peaks of the Silver Mountains, there flowed a river of glacial melt. At one point in its descent, the water encountered a massive, jagged boulder of black obsidian that had fallen into the center of the riverbed. A young traveler sat on the bank and watched the collision. The water struck the boulder with a violent roar, spraying white foam into the air. The traveler thought to himself, the water is working so hard to move the rock. It is fighting, pushing, and straining. Surely, this is the way to greatness, to strike the obstacle with everything you have. Years later, the traveler returned as an old man. He looked for the battle between the water and the stone. To his surprise, the roar was gone. The water was no longer spraying foam or striking the obsidian with fury. In fact, the water seemed to be ignoring the rock entirely. The river had not moved the boulder. Instead, it had simply forgotten the boulder existed. Through the quiet, persistent grace of its nature, the water had worn a smooth, deep channel around the stone. It had yielded so perfectly that the obstacle was no longer an obstacle. It was merely a feature of the scenery. The water was moving faster than ever, yet it appeared to be at total rest. I spent my life trying to be the hammer, the old man whispered. I should have been the water. The water does not fight the rock. It simply outlasts it by being more fluid than the rock is hard. You have been told that to be wealthy, you must be the hammer. You have been told to break through barriers and conquer the market. But the more you strike, the more the world hardens against you. Every hustle creates an equal and opposite resistance. This is why, after a day of intense effort, you feel drained of your vril. You have been using your own small, finite battery to try and move the infinite machinery of the world. The initiate of silent abundance practices non-striving action. This does not mean you sit in a dark room and do nothing. It means that your actions are no longer work. They are the natural overflow of your internal state. When you are truly aligned with the frequency of abundance, you will find yourself moved to take action. You will find yourself making a call, writing a page, or entering a room at exactly the right moment. To the observer, it may look like you are working, but to you, it feels like the river flowing around the boulder. There is no friction. There is no try. There is only the is. If you find yourself pushing against a closed door, stop. The push is a signal that you have fallen out of the law. You are trying to manufacture a result that your current vibration has not yet invited. In that moment of friction, the most productive thing you can do is to cease all effort. Return to the architecture of the void. Re-establish the scent of the mute merchant. Wait for the water to find the path around the stone. The world's poverty of effort is seen in its exhaustion. The sovereign's wealth of ease is seen in their vitality. The less you try, the more the universe can do through you. The silent practice, the dissolution of friction. This practice is to be used whenever you feel the sensation of grinding or struggling with a task or a financial goal. The immediate cessation, the moment you feel tension in your jaw, shoulders, or solar plexus while working. Stop. Set down your tools. Close your eyes. The identification of the rock. Visualize the problem or the goal as a black obsidian boulder sitting in the middle of your chest. Feel how hard and unyielding it is. The becoming of the water. Do not try to push the rock out. Instead, imagine your breath as a cool, clear stream of water entering your body. See this water flowing toward the boulder. Do not let the water hit the rock. Instead, see the water gently and effortlessly flowing around it. The affirmation of flow. Internally, without speaking, hold the feeling of the water. Realize that the water reaches the sea, whether the rock is there or not. The rock is irrelevant to the water's destiny. The return to action. When the physical tension has dissolved, return to your task. But do so with a soft hand. See if you can complete the task with 50% less physical and mental effort. If the friction returns, stop again. You are training your nervous system to understand that abundance does not require your suffering. You are teaching your soul that the river does not need to move the mountain to reach the ocean. It only needs to keep flowing. By releasing the hustle, you are finally allowing the great wealth to find you. It has been trying to reach you for years, but you are moving too fast and making too much noise to let it catch up. Slow down. Be the water. The sea is already waiting. Chapter 8. The Sacred Hoard. To the uninitiated, wealth is a display. They believe that for abundance to be real, it must be witnessed, validated, and envied by the other. They build their lives like glass houses, placing their successes on pedestals for the world to peer at through the windows. They believe that by showing what they have, they prove who they are. But in the hushed courts of the law of silent abundance, we know that the moment a secret is shared, its potency is halved. The moment a treasure is flaunted, it begins to leak its vril. The sacred hoard is the principle of private valuation. It is the understanding that true wealth is a reservoir of energy that must be kept under pressure to remain powerful. When you expose your riches, whether they be physical gold, a brilliant idea, or a deep spiritual realization to the common gaze, you are inviting the leeching effect of the world's collective lack. The gaze of the many is a hungry thing. It consumes the newness of your fortune and replaces it with the stale air of comparison. To live in silent abundance is to possess a sacred portion of your life that is entirely invisible to the world. It is the practice of having without showing, of knowing without telling, and of being without proving. This hidden reservoir becomes your inner bank, a source of such profound stability that the fluctuations of the marketplace can no longer touch your heart. You become like a kingdom with a hidden vault. Even if the fields are dry for a season, the king smiles, for he knows what lies beneath the stone. In the ancient, winding streets of the city of spices, there lived a woman known only as the keeper of the hidden pearl. She was not a queen, nor was she the wife of a merchant prince. She lived in a modest house with a simple wooden door, and she wore garments of plain, unbleached linen. Yet, there was a quality to her presence that defied her surroundings. Her skin seemed to catch the light even in the deepest shade, and her eyes held the calm of a mountain lake. It was whispered that she possessed a pearl of such immense size and supernatural radiance that it had been plucked from the crown of a fallen star. The legend said that if she were to sell it, she could buy the city 10 times over. One day, a young girl, driven by curiosity and the hunger of her own impoverished life, gained entry to the woman's garden. "Mother," the girl whispered, "everyone speaks of your pearl. They say it is the source of your peace. Why do you never wear it? Why do you not use it to build a palace or surround yourself with servants? What is the use of a treasure that no one sees?" The keeper smiled, and for a moment, the garden seemed to grow warmer. "Child," she said softly, "if I wore the pearl upon my neck, I would spend my days guarding it from thieves, and my nights polishing it for the eyes of strangers. I would become the servant of my own display. But because I keep it hidden in a box of plain wood beneath my floorboards, the pearl serves me." She leaned closer. "The pearl does not need to be seen to illuminate my life. I know it is there. That knowing is what lights my face. If I showed it to the world, it would become a common thing, an object of price. But as long as it is hidden, it is an object of power. My wealth is not in the pearl. My wealth is in the secret of the pearl. You must create your own hidden pearl." Most people spend their lives spending their energy before it has even materialized. They get a raise and immediately buy a car to signal the raise. They have a vision and immediately tweet the vision. They are like children who dig up a seed every hour to see if it has sprouted. The law of silent abundance requires you to cultivate a private opulence. This is the art of having this without showing it. It begins with the secret portion. If you receive a sum of money, keep a part of it heaven. If it is small, entirely hidden, do not tell your friends. Do not tell your ledger. Keep it in a place where only you know of its existence. This is not saving for a rainy day, for that is a thought of fear. This is planting a seed of sovereignty. When you know you have a hidden hoard, your frequency shifts from surviving to ruling. You walk differently when you have a secret gold coin in your shoe than when you have an empty pocket. Furthermore, the sacred hoard applies to your internal world. You must have thoughts that you never share. You must have spiritual practices that no one knows you perform. You must have invisible victories, goals you achieved that you told no one about. This builds a core of density within you. When you share your successes, you are seeking social currency, a cheap and fleeting substitute for universal substance. You are trading the gold of the gods for the copper of human applause. The initiate refuses this trade. They understand that the more the world knows about their wealth, the less power that wealth has over their own soul. By keeping the hoard sacred, you ensure that your abundance remains a dialogue between you and the infinite, rather than a performance for the finite. The silent practice, the consecration of the hidden. This practice is to establish your anchor of sovereignty through a physical and mental act of containment. The physical anchor: obtain a small container, a wooden box, a silk pouch, or a hidden drawer. Place within it a token of substance. This could be a high denomination bill, a piece of precious metal, or even a stone that represents a great wealth to you. The act of seclusion: place this container in a location where no other eye will ever see it. As you hide it, say internally, "This is the route, this is the unseen source. It belongs to no one but the silence." The mental seal: for the next 30 days, you must not mention your finances, your successes, or your plans to anyone unless it is absolutely necessary for the functioning of your business. If someone asks how you are doing, do not say, "I'm doing great. I just closed a deal." Simply say, "I am well," and let the secret of the deal stay in your hoard. The feeding of the secret: once a week, go to your hidden container. Do not take the money out. Do not spend it. Simply touch the container and feel the pressure of having. Realize that you are a person who has a secret wealth. Let that knowing seep into your bones. You will find that, as your sacred hoard grows not just in physical value, but in the energy of the secret, your need for external validation will wither and die. You will no longer be a striver looking for a handout from the world's attention. You will be a sovereign sitting upon a hidden vault, watching the world's hustle with the calm, quiet eyes of the keeper of the pearl. The world cannot take what it does not know exists. The world cannot dim a light it cannot see. In the sacred hoard, you find the ultimate protection, the wealth of the invisible. Chapter 9. The Rhythm of the Tide. To the uninitiated, the absence of movement is equated with death. They live in a linear fever dream where up is the only acceptable direction and more is the only holy metric. When the marketplace falls silent, or when the expected harvest of their efforts is delayed, they succumb to the terror of the void. They begin to frantically sow more seeds in parched earth, screaming at the sky for rain, not realizing that their very desperation is the heat that keeps the clouds at bay. They have forgotten that the universe does not move in a straight line, but in a great breath. The rhythm of the tide is the esoteric understanding of the law of periodicity. It is the realization that abundance has an inhalation and an exhalation. There are seasons for the sacred hoard to be filled, and seasons where the waters seem to recede, leaving the shore of your life bare and salty. The hustler views the receding tide as a failure of his will. The initiate views it as the necessary gathering of momentum. In the law of silent abundance, we do not fear the dry season. We recognize it as a period of subterranean preparation. Just as the ocean pulls back its hymn only to return with the crushing weight of a new wave. The slack in your financial or creative life is the silence before a symphony. To panic during the recession is to interrupt the rhythm. To remain still, to maintain the frequency of having when the mirror shows empty, is the highest form of mirror alchemy. It is the proof that you have finally mastered the weight of gold. In the furthest reaches of the burning sands, where the horizon is a shimmering line of mercury, there lived a figure known as the desert monk. He did not dwell in an oasis with date palms and bubbling springs. He lived in a cell of wind-carved stone at the center of a vast, arid plain. For 3 years, not a single drop of rain fell upon his land. The nearby villages were in a state of mourning. The merchants cursed the gods. The farmers dug frantically into the dust until their hands were raw. The wealthy fled to the mountains, dragging their heavy chests of gold. But the monk remained. He sat in his cell, his breath slow and rhythmic, his eyes fixed on the empty sky with a look of profound, expectant peace. A traveler, parched and weary, stumbled upon the monk's cell. "Old man," the traveler croaked, "why do you not weep? The world is dying. The rivers have turned to bone. There is no wealth left in this soil." The monk did not look away from the horizon. "The world is not dying," he whispered. "It is merely holding its breath. The earth is thirsty, and in its thirst, it is pulling its roots deeper than they have ever gone. It is searching for the ancient springs, the waters that do not depend on the clouds." He smiled, a slow and terrifyingly calm expression. "I celebrate the drought. It clears the land of the shallow and the weak. It forces the gold to stay in the dark, where it can ripen. I do not ask for the rain to come today. I prepare my vessels for the day it cannot help but fall. The longer the wait, the greater the flood." That night, the wind shifted. A scent of damp stone carried across the stanza, scent the monk had been emanating from his own soul for 1,000 days. When the deluge finally came, it did not merely dampen the sand. It transformed the desert into a sea. The villagers were washed away because they had not built for the flood. But the monk's cell remained, for he had spent the drought carving deeper cisterns into the bedrock. You are currently in a rhythm. If your life feels dry, it is because the universe is asking you to deepen your cistern. It is asking you to stop looking at the clouds and start looking at the bedrock, the architecture of the void within you. The poverty of hustle is never more apparent than during a lull. The uninitiated will tell you to pivot, to grind harder, to force the breakthrough. This is the equivalent of a farmer screaming at a seed to grow in winter. It is a waste of vril. Instead, when the tide recedes, you must practice the sovereign wait. This is not a passive waiting of hope. It is an active waiting of knowing. It is the period where you reinforce your lead room and protect your sacred hoard. If the money is not flowing out of the world toward you, then use that time to ensure that when it does flow, it finds a vessel that is heavy enough to hold it. The rhythm of the tide teaches us that the slack is a gift. It is the only time you can truly hear the subterranean river. When you are busy counting your gains, you are often deaf to the deeper frequencies of the spirit. When the external noise of success fades, you have the opportunity to tune your nervous system to a much higher level of abundance, the kind that does not rely on the whims of the marketplace. but on the ancient springs of the void. Do not be the merchant who flees the desert. Be the monk who carves the stone. If the mirror shows a dry account, do not blink. Do not change your face. Maintain the scent of the mute merchant. The tide has no choice but to return. It is the law of its being. Your only task is to be there, silent and ready, when the water reaches the shore. The silent practice, the tuning of the cistern. This ritual is to be performed when you feel the pinch of a delay or a period of inactivity in your prosperity. The somatic shift. Sit in total darkness. Feel the emptiness of your current situation, not as a lack, but as a vacuum of preparation. The deepening. Visualize your soul as a great stone cistern beneath the desert floor. With every inhalation, imagine you are carving the walls of this cistern deeper and wider. Feel the physical sensation of expansion in your ribcage and belly. The calling of the scent. Recall the fragrance of the finished from chapter 6. Fill your internal cistern with this scent. Do not wait for the water, the money, to bring the scent. Provide the scent yourself. The decree of the tide. Whisper to the darkness. The tide is gathering. I am the shore. I am wide enough. I am deep enough. I am ready for the wait. For the remainder of the week, observe the slack in your life with a secret, knowing smile. When others ask if you are worried about the slow season, simply reply, I am preparing for the flood. By refusing to panic, you are signaling to the universe that you understand its rhythm. You are moving from the status of a victim of cycles to the master of the great breath. And the universe always favors those who speak its mother tongue. Chapter 10. The Shadow of Want. In the sprawling galleries of the human ego, there is a ghost that haunts even the most gilded halls. It is the spirit of comparison, the shadow of want. The uninitiated live in a state of perpetual peripheral vision. They cannot savor their own bread if they smell the neighbor's pheasant. They believe that the universe is a finite pie, and every slice claimed by another is a piece stolen from their own plate. When they see the success of a peer, they feel a phantom pain, a subtle pinch in the spirit that whispers, why them and not me? This pinch is the death knell of abundance. To the law of silent abundance, envy is more than a moral failing. It is a catastrophic technical error. It is a declaration to the mirror that you believe in elsewhere. It is a confession that wealth is something that happens to other people, thereby placing it outside the boundary of your own sovereign domain. When you look upon another's gold with bitterness, you are effectively telling the great provider that frequency is foreign to me. Do not bring it near my house. The shadow of want must be transmuted. You must learn to use the prosperity of others as a tuning fork. In the silent rain, there is no other. There is only the reflection. If wealth appears in your field of vision, even if it is in the hands of a stranger, is a signal that the frequency is drawing near. It is a preview of your own coming attractions. To bless the wealth of another is to claim it for yourself. To curse it is to build a wall between your hand and the gold. In the city of glass, which stood at the edge of the silver sea, there were two master mirror makers. They lived in identical towers, separated only by a narrow garden of white roses. The first mirror maker, a man of sharp features and restless hands, spent his days peering through his window at his rival's tower. Whenever a merchant's carriage stopped at the other's gate, the first maker would grow dark with bile. He steals my light, he would hiss. Every reflection he captures is a reflection I have lost. One afternoon, a great solar eclipse occurred, and the sun became a blinding ring of fire. The first maker, driven by a desperate need to outshine his neighbor, turned his finest mirror toward the sun. But because his heart was full of the cracks of envy, the mirror could not hold the intensity of the light. It shattered into 1,000 jagged shards, leaving him in a room of broken glass and distorted shadows. The second mirror maker did not watch the street. He spent his time polishing his glass until it was so clear it seemed to vanish. When he saw the success of his neighbor or the wealth of the merchants, he did not feel a pinch. He felt a resonance. Ah, he would say, see how well the light is moving today? The air is ripe for brilliance. When the eclipse came, he too held up his mirror. But because he viewed the sun not as a competitor, but as his own source, his mirror did not shatter. It became the sun. It reflected the ring of fire so perfectly that his entire tower began to glow with a heedless, golden luminescence. He did not need to seek customers. The light from his tower was visible for 100 miles, and the world beat a path to his door. He had realized that the sun does not compete with the stars. It simply increases the light of the entire sky. You must heal the cracks in your mirror. Envy is a confession of separation, and separation is the mother of poverty. If you walk through the world and feel a sting of resentment at the sight of a private jet, a sprawling estate, or a person who seems to move with the effortless grace of the unearned rich, you are acting as the first mirror maker. You are shattering your own capacity to hold that same light. The initiate practices radical integration. When you see wealth in the world, you must adopt the inner posture of a connoisseur viewing his own collection. You must say, in the silence of your mind, "Ah, look at how beautifully I am reflecting in that form today." By claiming the success of others as a symptom of your own rising frequency, you dissolve the shadow of want. You move from the vibration of seeking, which implies you don't have, to the vibration of observing, which implies you are the owner of the reality in which the wealth exists. This is the ultimate deconstruction of hustle culture, which thrives on the poverty of comparison. The hustle tells you to outperform your neighbor. The law tells you to become the neighbor's success. When you can genuinely rejoice in the abundance of another, you have effectively told the universe that you are at home with that amount of money. You have signaled that the frequency is comfortable for you. The shadow of want is only cast when you stand outside the light. Step into the center. Recognize that there is no other in the void. There is only the great breath. And if it is filling the lungs of the person next to you, it is proof that the air is plentiful. The silent practice, the blessing of the rival. This practice is the most difficult and the most rewarding of the liturgical path. It is the acid test of your sovereignty. The identification. Identify someone in your field, a competitor, a peer, or a public figure whose success causes you the most pinch. Be honest. Who is the person you like but secretly envy? The astral banquet. Sit in your architecture of the void. Visualize this person. See them at the height of their prosperity. See them receiving the very thing you desire. The contract, the windfall, the recognition, the transmutation. Instead of turning away, move toward them in your mind. See the light of abundance flowing through them. Now, perform a frequency handshake. Imagine that their success is a tuning fork. Feel your own body beginning to vibrate at the same pitch. The sovereign claim. Say internally, "I thank you for manifesting this frequency in my field of vision. I recognize this as my own reflection. I bless your fullness, for your fullness is the proof of my own." 5. The secret act. If possible, perform a small, invisible act, as in Chapter 3, that benefits this person's success, without them ever knowing. When you can bless the one who has what you want, you have removed the final obstacle to receiving it. You have proven to the mirror that you are no longer a striver in the shadows, but a master of the light. The shadow of want cannot survive in a room where every reflection is claimed as a gift. As you walk through the marketplace tomorrow, look for the wealthiest person you can find. Do not look at them with the eyes of a have-not. Look at them with the eyes of a king, watching a favored subject thrive. Their gold is your gold, for in the law of silent abundance, the light is one and the same. Chapter 11. The Alchemy of the Ordinary. To the uninitiated, abundance is a destination reached only through the acquisition of the extraordinary. They spend their days chasing the grand event, the massive contract, the inheritance, the sudden windfall, while trampling over the small substance of their daily lives. They treat the single coin with indifference and the common loaf with contempt, waiting for real wealth that they believe exists elsewhere. But in the hushed courts of the law of silent abundance, we recognize that the infinite does not reside in the large, it resides in the atomic. The alchemy of the ordinary is the liturgical practice of treating every particle of matter as if it were a dormant sun. It is the understanding that there is no small amount of money, just as there is no small amount of God. If you cannot find the frequency of opulence in the way you hold a copper penny, you will never find it in the possession of a gold bar. The universe is holographic. The whole is contained within the part. To despise the ordinary is to signal to the mirror that you are blind to the very substance you claim to seek. When you treat your current, modest resources with the reverence of a high priest tending a sacred flame, you perform a transmutation. You shift the object from the category of survival to the category of substance. By blessing the ordinary, you remove the ceiling of its limitation. You begin to see that poverty is not a lack of resources, but a lack of reverence for what is already in the hand. In the ancient, dust-swirled town of Al-Haza, where the wind whispered secrets of forgotten sultans, there lived an old baker known for a miracle that the townspeople called the loaf of 1,000 crumbs. Al-Haza was a poor place, and the baker's shop was nothing more than a clay oven and a wooden table smoothed by decades of use. While other bakers in the distant capital complained about the rising price of grain and the coarseness of the flour, the old baker of Al-Haza treated every sack of wheat as if it were a gift from the stars. When he measured the flour, he did not do so with the hurried hands of a businessman. He touched the powder with the tips of his fingers, feeling the hidden life within the husk. When he added water, he did so in a slow, rhythmic pour, as if he were conducting a symphony. One year, a great famine struck the land. The granaries were empty, and the wealthy began to hoard their moldy crusts. The baker was left with only a single, meager handful of grain, barely enough to feed a bird, let alone a village. The baker did not panic. He sat in his architecture of the void and placed a tiny pile of grain upon his table. He blessed it. He spoke to the grain, not of its smallness, but of its infinite potential to multiply. He ground it with a stone, mixed it with a drop of water, and baked a single, tiny loaf. When he broke the bread, a strange thing happened. Every person who took a crumb felt as though they had consumed a feast. The single loaf fed the entire village for 3 days, and still, a basket of fragments remained. The baker had not added more flour. He had added more depth. He had found the infinite within the finite, proving that the size of the gift is irrelevant when the reverence of the giver is absolute. You are currently holding your single handful of grain. You may look at your current bank balance, your modest home, or your simple tools and see the ordinary. You may even see not enough. But this is the gaze of the striver. The initiate looks at the ordinary and sees the seed of the all. To practice the law of silent abundance, you must stop waiting for big money to start living a big life. You must begin to consecrate your current possessions. This is the secret of the liturgical touch. How do you handle your wallet? Do you cram your bills into it with a spirit of chaos and resentment? Or do you smooth them out with the respect due to a representative of the universal flow? How do you eat your meals? Do you bolt them down while worrying about the hustle? Or do you savor the texture of the bread as if it were the body of the divine? When you treat the ordinary with high-frequency attention, the ordinary begins to expand. This is the alchemy of the ordinary. By refusing to call anything cheap or common, you pull those objects out of the world of lack and into your lead room of abundance. If you have $10 and you spend it with a heavy heart, you are confirming a reality of $10 and decreasing. But if you spend that same $10 with the internal scent of a billionaire, with a quiet, sovereign indifference and a blessing for the one who receives it to have turned that $10 into a loaf of 1,000 crumbs, you have signaled to the mirror that you are a person of such vast internal resources that $10 is merely a drop in an infinite ocean. The mirror has no choice but to reflect the ocean back to you. The silent practice, the rite of the first fruit. This practice is designed to shift your relationship with small substance and trigger the expansion of the finite. The selection. Take a common object that you interact with daily, a single coin, a piece of fruit, or a tool of your trade. The consecration. Sit in silence with the object. Do not look at its market value. Look at its existence. Contemplate the thousands of coincidences, the sunlight, the labor, and the cosmic forces that conspired to put this object in your hand. The infusion. Imagine a golden light flowing from your heart into the object. See the object not as a thing, but as a gateway. Realize that this one coin is connected to all the gold in the world. This one tool is connected to all the mastery in the world. The liturgical use or spend the object with a deliberate, slow grace. If it is a coin, leave it in a public place as a seed of joy. If it is a tool, use it with a sense of royal appointment, the refusal of smallness, for the next 7 days. Strike the words just, only, and small from your vocabulary when referring to your resources. Never say, it's just $20. Say, this is $20 of the universal substance. By doing this, you are training your soul to see the gold in the iron. You are becoming the baker of El-Haza. When you no longer despise the day of small things, the day of great things will find you standing ready, with a vessel that is already full of the only thing that matters. The realization that there is no ordinary in a universe of miracles. You do not need more. You need more of what you already have. Chapter the 12th. The Sovereign Decree. In the laboratories of the hustle, the seeker is a petitioner. They look to the stars, the economy, or the employer. And they ask, sometimes with a whisper, sometimes with a scream, for permission to be prosperous. They believe that wealth is a door that is locked from the outside, and that if they only plead with enough fervor, or work with enough desperation, the great gatekeeper will eventually turn the key. But in the hushed courts of the law of silent abundance, we recognize the final, staggering truth. There is no gatekeeper. You are the one holding the key, and the lock is a phantom of your own making. The sovereign decree is the realization that the initiate is not a subject of reality, but its legislator. To live in silent abundance is to cease asking for what you want and to begin decreeing what is. This is not the loud, ego-driven demand of the arrogant. It is the quiet, immovable certainty of the king who knows that his word is law. When a sovereign speaks, he does not look to see if the world agrees. He does not check the news to see if his decree is realistic. He speaks, and the universe, like a faithful scribe, begins the work of recording the new law into the fabric of matter. The poverty of hustle is a state of perpetual negotiation. You are constantly trying to strike a deal with life. If I do this, will you give me that? The sovereign decree ends all negotiation. It is the transition from the if then of the servant to the it is of the master. It is the highest application of the architecture of the void. For once the space is cleared, it is your decree that determines what shall fill it. Beyond the edges of the known maps, in a library built of silent marble and moonlight, there lived the scribe of the unwritten law. He was an old man, though his eyes held the clarity of a youth who had never known a day of labor. He sat before a massive book, the Codex Manifestum, whose pages were entirely blank, shimmering with a silver light that seemed to wait for a touch. For centuries, travelers had found their way to the scribe's library. They came with scrolls of petitions, lists of grievances, and maps of the treasures they hoped to find. They would lay these papers before the scribe and beg him to write their names into the book of fortune. "I cannot write your story," the scribe would say, his voice like the rustle of dry leaves. "I am only the witness. The pen is yours." One day, a weary merchant came, having lost everything to the tides and the thieves of the road. He did not bring a petition. He did not bring a plea. He sat before the blank book and looked at the scribe. "I am tired of asking for what is already mine," the merchant said. He took the pen, and instead of writing a request for gold or a prayer for safety, he wrote a single sentence in a firm, quiet hand. "I am the center of a kingdom that knows no lack." He did not wait for the ink to dry. He did not ask the scribe if the sentence was true. He simply closed the book, stood up, and walked out of the library. That night, the laws of the land began to shift. The winds changed to bring his ships home. The thieves felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to return what they had taken, and the very earth beneath his feet seemed to yield up the scent of buried gems. He had stopped being a character in a tragedy and had become the author of a triumph. He did not find wealth. He commanded it to appear, and the universe had no choice but to obey the sovereign decree. You have spent too long as the merchant with a petition. You have been waiting for the market to tell you it's okay to be rich. You have been waiting for your hard work to finally reach a threshold where you deserve to be free. But deserving is a concept for servants. The sovereign does not deserve his crown. He wears it. The law of silent abundance requires you to issue a private legislation. This is a decree made in the absolute secrecy of your lead room. It is a moment where you look at the lack in the mirror and you say, with a cold, divine authority, "This law is repealed. I no longer recognize the authority of scarcity." When you issue a sovereign decree, you do not look for proof in the outer world. If you look for proof, you are admitting that you are still a petitioner. If you decree that you are wealthy, and then check your bank account to see if it's working, you have just canceled your own law. A king does not check with the peasants to see if his tax law is in effect. He assumes it is being collected the moment the ink is dry. This is the power of the internal yes. Most people live in a state of internal no, a constant background static of self-correction and doubt. The sovereign decree is the total yes. It is the alignment of your thoughts, your emotions, and your very selves with a single, unshakable fact. When you decree your abundance, you are not trying to manifest money. You are stating that the money is already a part of your sovereign territory. You are simply waiting for the slow-moving couriers of the physical world to deliver the message to your doorstep. The silent practice, the signing of the codex. This ritual is to be performed with the gravity of a coronation. It is the moment you move from seeking to sovereignty. The preparation. Find a piece of fine paper and a pen. Treat these objects with a liturgical touch from the previous chapter. The silence. Enter your architecture of the void. Breathe until the noise of the hustle is a distant, insignificant hum. The writing of the law. Write a single, present tense decree regarding your abundance. Do not use the words want, need, or will. Use the language of the is. For example, I am the sovereign of a limitless supply. All that I require seeks me as I seek it. 4. The seal of silence. Fold the paper. Do not show it to anyone. Do not read it again. As you fold it, feel the heat of the decree, the vril being locked inside the paper. The physical anchor. Place the paper in your sacred hoard, or bury it in the earth of a potted plant. From this moment on, the law is in effect. For the next week, whenever a thought of doubt or lack arises, do not argue with it. Simply remind yourself, the law has been signed. The matter is settled. You will find that this shift in posture from asking to decreeing changes the very texture of your reality. You will no longer work to get money. You will move through the world to collect what is already legally yours. The hustle dies because there is no longer anything to fight for. There is only the royal procession toward the harvest you have already commanded. The scribe is waiting. The page is blank. What is the law of your life? Chapter 13. The echo of the future. In the marketplace of the uninitiated, time is a cruel master. The hustler lives in a state of perpetual, not yet, chasing a horizon that recedes with every step he takes. He views the future as a distant land he must reach through the sheer force of his endurance. And he views the present as a barren wasteland to be endured until he makes it. But in the hushed courts of the law of silent abundance, we recognize that time is not a road, it is an atmosphere. The echo of the future is the metaphysical realization that the wealth you desire is not something you are moving toward. It is something that is already vibrating in the higher octaves of your current space. In the 2026th year of the Great Breath, we understand that linear time is the blindfold of the servant. The sovereign knows that the future self, the one who already possesses the gold, the peace, and the sovereignty is sending a signal back to the present. This signal is the echo. To live in silent abundance is to learn the art of temporal collapse. It is the ability to pull the feeling state of your ultimate victory into the cells of your body now. When you inhabit the frequency of the future while standing in the physical shell of the present, you create a vacuum in the fabric of time. The future, seeing its own likeness in the now, has no choice but to collapse toward you. You do not travel to the wealth. You become the destination, and the wealth travels to you. In the high valleys of the Silk Reach, there lived a figure known as the Weaver of Starlight. She did not use the wool of sheep or the threads of silkworms. Instead, she sat upon a mountain peak with a loom made of ancient, petrified bone, and she reached her hands into the blackness of the night sky. The people of the valley lived in a perpetual state of preparation. They spun thick, heavy wool for the winters they feared, and they hoarded grain for the droughts they anticipated. They were always working for a tomorrow that was cold and hungry. But the weaver worked differently. She watched the stars, knowing that the light she saw was an echo of a fire that had burned millions of years ago. Or perhaps a light from a star that had not yet fully flared into being. One winter, a cold so profound descended upon the valley that the thickest wool could not keep the people warm. They climbed to the weaver's peak, shivering and desperate. They found her draped in a cloak that shimmered with a pale, impossible luminescence. It was as thin as a shadow, yet she sat in the snow as if she were bathed in the warmth of a summer noon. "How can this be?" the village elder chattered. "The sun is gone. The spring is months away." The weaver did not stop her loom. "You weave with the threads of now," she said. "You weave with the fear of the frost that is already here. I weave with the threads of the stars, whose light has not yet reached the earth. I am wearing the warmth of a summer that has not yet happened. Because I have invited the heat of the future into my cloak today, the winter cannot find me. I do not wait for the season to change. I change the season within my own hands. You are currently shivering in the winter of your finances or your ambitions because you are weaving with the threads of your current circumstances. You are looking at the now, the unpaid bill, the modest car, the quiet phone, and you are calling it the truth. But the now is merely the dying echo of your past thoughts. It is a star that has already gone dark. The law of silent abundance requires you to reach into the blackness of your future and pull back the shimmering threads of your success. This is not fantasy. It is frequency, synchronization. When you sit in your lead room, you must identify the echo of the wealthy version of yourself. How does that version of you breathe? How do they touch the table? How do they look at the world? The poverty of hustle is always trying to build the future. The sovereign remembers the future. When you perform a task, whether it is washing a dish or signing a contract, you must do it as the person who has already succeeded. You are not trying to get there. You are acting as if you are already back from there. This creates the temporal collapse. When you bring the mood of your future wealth into the present moment, the universe experiences a contradiction. It sees a person in a modest room who feels like a king. The mirror of reality cannot sustain a contradiction for long. It must resolve the tension by manifesting the physical circumstances that match the internal mood. By weaving with starlight, you ensure that the winter of lack has no power over you. You are already draped in the warmth of the summer to come. The silent practice, the loom of the future present. This ritual is to be performed in the deep stillness of the night, when the world's hustle is asleep and the threads of time are most fluid. The casting of the net. Close your eyes and move your awareness 3 years into the future. Do not look at events. Look for the scent and the weight. Find the version of you that has lived in silent abundance for 1,000 days. The extraction of the thread. Identify one specific physical sensation from that future. Perhaps it is the feeling of absolute safety in your chest, or the cool texture of a specific material you will then own. The weaving. Bring that sensation back into your current body. Feel it now. If your future self feels unhurried, then be unhurried in this moment. If your future self feels magnanimous, then feel magnanimous toward your current bills. The refusal of the delay throughout the next day. Whenever you feel the urge to say, "I will be happy when," or "I will be rich when," stop. Replace it with the echo. Say internally, "I am weaving with the summer light." Do not tell the world you are manifesting your future. 2. Do so is to admit it isn't here yet. Simply wear the cloak of the weaver. Walk through the marketplace as if you are a visitor from your own glorious future, looking back at these modest times with a sense of nostalgic affection. When the future sees that you have already moved in, it has no choice but to hand you the keys. The echo is not a sound, it is a summons. Chapter 14. The Dissolution of the Seeker. In the final stages of the great work, the uninitiated reach a plateau of exhaustion. They have spent years polishing their manifestation techniques, chanting their mantras, and perfecting their hustle, yet they remain on the shore of the promised land. They are like a man standing before a mirror, trying to force his reflection to smile, while his own face remains tight with the strain of trying. They are stuck in the most subtle of all traps, the identity of the seeker. The seeker is a figure of perpetual motion but zero displacement. To be a seeker is to fundamentally admit that you do not have. The more you seek abundance, the more you confirm its distance. In the hushed courts of the law of silent abundance, we recognize that the final barrier to the gold is the person who wants it. To enter the Holy of Holies, the striver must be sacrificed. The seeker must dissolve. The dissolution of the seeker is the moment when the law of silent abundance ceases to be a practice and becomes your very skin. It is the realization that there is no wealth to be found out there because the seeker, the seeking, and the sought are a single, indivisible movement of the void. When you stop trying to find the sea, you realize you have been wet the entire time. You do not attract money. You acknowledge that you are the space in which the money appears. This is the end of the journey, the point where the manuscript falls silent because the truth has become in the heart of the deepest blue, far beneath the reach of the wind and the white-capped waves. There lived a single drop of water. This drop was obsessed with a legend it had heard from the drifting foam. The legend of the great ocean. "I must find the ocean," the drop whispered, its tiny heart pounding with the hustle of its mission. "I have heard the ocean is vast, infinite, and holds all the treasures of the world. I will not rest until I have merged with its glory." The drop spent years traveling. It pushed itself through the currents, strained against the tides, and studied the maps of the whales. It sought out teachers in chant, barnacles, and wise currents, asking each of them, "Where is the ocean? How much further must I strive? What ritual must I perform to be worthy of its depth?" The teachers smiled and said nothing, for they were already the ocean. One afternoon, the drop reached a state of absolute, shattering exhaustion. It could no longer seek. It could no longer try. It simply gave up. It ceased its movement and surrendered to the stillness of the deep. In that moment of total cessation, the seeker dissolved. The drop stopped looking for the ocean and simply felt the ocean. It realized that every molecule of its being was made of the very thing it had been chasing. It was not in the ocean. It was the ocean, perceiving itself as a drop. The treasures it sought were not at the end of a journey. They were the very substance of its own body. It laughed a silent, liquid laugh, for it realized that its hard work had been the only thing preventing it from seeing that it was already home. You are that drop. Your hustle, your spiritual practices, and even your reading of this manuscript have been, in a sense, the movement that kept you from the stillness. You have been looking for abundance, as if it were a city you could visit, or a prize you could win. But abundance is the water. You are the drop. The poverty of hustle is the belief that you are separate from the source. It is the belief that you are a small, finite ego that must get things from a large, indifferent universe. The dissolution of the seeker is the end of this duality. It is the realization that the bank account, the gold, and the opportunities are not coming to you. They are arising within you. When you dissolve the seeker, you no longer feel the pinch of lack, because there is no longer a you to be lacking. There is only the great breath moving through the form of your life. You stop working for money and start moving as wealth. This is a subtle but total shift in the nervous system. You no longer care if the manifestation arrives tomorrow or 10 years from now, because you have realized that the feeling of having it is the same as the thing itself. And ironically, the moment you truly stop caring is the moment the floodgates shatter. In this stage, you move with a terrifying ease, because you are no longer trying to prove anything to the mirror. The mirror becomes a servant of your slightest whim. You have become the mute merchant from chapter 6. But now, even the mute merchant has dissolved into the scent itself. You are the gold. You are the void. You are the law, the silent practice, the ocean of the bed. This practice is the final preparation for the closing ceremony. It is designed to collapse the last remnants of the seeking ego. The final surrender. Lie flat on your back, your arms at your sides. Imagine your body is melting into the surface beneath you. The dissolution of the boundary as you breathe. Imagine the air in the room and the air in your lungs are not two different things. See the boundary of your skin as a porous, disappearing line. The identification with the all. Do not think of your money. Think of all the money in the world. See it as a single, vast river of energy. Now, realize that this river is not outside you. It is flowing through you. You are the river. The cessation of the why. For 5 minutes, hold no goals. Have no desires. Do not even desire to be abundant. simply exist as the space in which everything exists. The decree of the arrived whisper to the silence. The search is over. The seeker is gone. There is only the fullness. When you rise from this practice, do not look for results. Looking for results is a symptom of the seeker. Instead, move through your house as if you are the owner of the universe, merely stopping by to visit this specific room. You will find that a strange, heavy peace has taken up residence in your bones. This is the wealth that passeth understanding. You are no longer trying to be rich. You are simply being. And in that being, the law of silent abundance finds its final, perfect expression. Chapter the 15th. The Silent Rain. You have reached the summit of the Silver Mountains, but you do not stand atop them as a conqueror. You stand as the mountain itself. The hustle is now a faint, frantic buzzing in the valley far below, a noise made by those who still believe that the sun must be chased. You know better. You know that the sun does not move. It is the world that turns to meet it. The silent rain is the final integration of the law. It is the transition from practicing a teaching to embodying a state of being. In this state, there are no more rituals, for your every breath has become liturgical. There are no more visualizations, for your eyes have learned to see the gold in the iron without effort. You have entered the Sabbath of the soul, the permanent realization that the universe is not a competition to be won, but a sovereign territory to be administered. To reign in silence is to move through the marketplace of 2026 as a ghost of prosperity. You occupy the same space as the strivers. You speak the same language as the merchants, yet you are fundamentally untouched by their anxieties. You are the lead room in motion. You are the sacred Hoard walking. The silent rain is the ultimate protection, for when you no longer need the world to confirm your wealth, the world loses the power to deny it. At the center of the Great Plains, where the winds are constant and the grass bows in eternal reverence, there stood a peak known as the Lone Monolith. It did not have the jagged, aggressive edges of the younger mountains. It was a smooth, ancient crown of granite that seemed to grow directly out of the heart of the earth. The mountain did not hustle. It did not grow trees to prove its fertility, nor did it scream with thunder to prove its power. It simply was. Yet, because of its silent presence, it dictated the life of the entire valley. Its height forced the clouds to break and surrender their reign. Its shadow provided the only cool sanctuary for the weary during the heat of the noon. The rivers did not flow because the mountain tried to make them. They flowed because the mountain's very existence created the slope. One day, a young storm cloud, full of lightning and arrogance, roared at the monolith. "Move!" The storm screamed. "I am the force of change. I am the noise of the new world. Why do you sit there, silent and heavy, while I do the work of the sky?" The monolith did not answer. It did not brace itself. It simply maintained its gravity. The storm struck the granite with all its fury, but the lightning merely danced across the stone and disappeared into the earth. The wind blew itself out against the unmoving mass. When the storm was exhausted, it dissolved into a gentle mist, which the mountain then used to nourish the moss upon its base. The mountain did not defeat the storm. It outweighed it. It reigned not by action, but by the absolute refusal to be moved from its center. This is the secret of the sovereign. In the world of 2026, the storms are constant. Economic shifts, digital noise, the frantic opinions of the collective. If you react to these things, you are the storm, fleeting, loud, and destined to dissipate. If you remain centered in your internal opulence, you are the monolith. The silent rain means that you no longer look to the news to see if you are wealthy. You no longer look to your productivity to see if you have value. You have reached a point of gravitational certainty. Just as the mountain does not ask the rain to fall, you do not ask for opportunities. Your frequency, the scent of the mute merchant, and the weight of the anchor creates a psychic slope. Resources, people, and gold begin to slide toward you because it is the path of least resistance. In the silent rain, you become a quiet provider. You may find that people are drawn to you without knowing why. They feel the vacuum of the void in your presence, and they seek to fill it with their offerings. You do not need to pitch. You do not need to sell, and you certainly do not need to hustle. You merely need to remain in your lead room. keeping the sacred hoard of your peace intact. The greatest power is the power that does not have to be exercised to be felt. This is the reign. It is a life of effortless administration. You see a need, and you decree its fulfillment. You see a debt, and you recognize its dissolution. You see a dream, and you inhabit its echo until the walls of the present melt away. You are the architect, the scribe, and the king, all contained within a single, silent breath. The silent practice, the coronation of the ordinary. This is the final practice before the closing ceremony. It is to be performed while you are moving through the mundane world. The sovereign walk. As you walk down a public street, imagine that the ground beneath your feet is not common pavement, but the floor of your own palace. The gaze of the owner. Look at the buildings, the cars, and the people not as external objects, but as assets of the realm. Do not desire them. Simply acknowledge them as part of the reality you administer. The silent blessing. As you pass people who are clearly trapped in the hustle, do not pity them. Instead, cast a silent, golden echo toward them. Internally say, "Peace be to your house. There is enough." This is the act of a sovereign who has so much that he can afford to bless his subjects without diminishing his own hoard. The maintenance of the void. If a thought of "I need to do more" arises, meet it with the silence of the monolith. Realize that the mountain does nothing, yet nothing is left undone. You are now ready to seal the work. The hustle is dead. The striver has dissolved. What remains is the silent reign of life lived in the cool, deep waters of the subterranean river, where the gold is heavy, the air is still, and the abundance is as natural as the turning of the earth. The closing ceremony. The seal of solitude. The teachings of the silent abundance are now woven into the fabric of your nervous system. You have learned to clear the void, to project the mirror, to protect the lead room, and to reign as the monolith. But there is a final danger. The hunger of the mind to share the light before it has fully hardened into gold. The seal of solitude is a vow of spiritual economy. It is the understanding that the most sacred truths are like rare gases. If the vessel is opened, they vanish into the atmosphere, leaving only a faint scent and a cold room. To maintain the frequency of the silent rain, you must commit the ultimate act of invisible wealth. You must never speak of these laws to the uninitiated. You must never attempt to save those who are still in the fever of the hustle, for their doubt will act as a parasite upon your peace. From this moment forward, your abundance is a secret you keep with the divine. Your success will be visible to the world, but the source of that success must remain hidden behind the one-way glass. When men ask you the secret of your prosperity, you may speak of timing, luck, or hard work, the common language of the marketplace. But you must never reveal the subterranean river. To keep the secret is to keep the power. In the twilight of a forgotten epoch, there was a master smith who had discovered the golden key, a tool that could unlock any door, whether made of iron, stone, or the invisible barriers of time. The key was not made of metal. It was made of a single, crystallized thought of opening. The master smith knew that if the secret of the key were known, the world would descend into chaos. 4 men would use it to bypass the growth required to be worthy of what lay behind the doors. So, he performed a final ritual. He walked to the great gate of the silent city, placed the key into the lock, and turned it. As the gate swung open, revealing a world of eternal light and unmoving gold, the key did not remain in his hand. Because it had reached the end of its purpose, the key began to vibrate. It grew hot, then white-colored, and finally, it melted. The liquid gold of the key flowed into the crevices of the lock, cooling and hardening until it became one with the gate itself. The master smith walked through the gate and closed it behind him. The lock was now sealed forever. No one else could enter using his key, for the key no longer existed as a separate thing. It had become the very mechanism of the opening. The smith did not need to carry the secret any longer. He was the secret, living in the city that the secret had revealed. You are the master smith. This audiobook, these chapters, and these rituals have been your golden key. But now, as we reach the end of the manuscript, the key must melt. Do not go back to study these words as a student. Do not analyze the parables as a scholar. Let the key melt into the lock of your own life. Let the teachings become inseparable from the way you breathe, the way you walk, and the way you handle your gold. The manuscript ends here because there is nothing left to say. You are the silent city. You are the city of glass. The final ritual, the binding of the breath, the physical seal. Place your right hand over your heart and your left hand over your solar plexus. Feel the weight of gold in your center. The internal vow. Repeat these words in the absolute silence of your mind. I acknowledge the source. I protect the hoard. I reign in silence. The search is over. The dissolution of the guide. Imagine the voice you have been listening to, the voice of this teaching, fading into a single, low-frequency hum, and then into total silence. See the key of this manuscript melting into your heart. The return to the world. Open your eyes. Do not look for a sign. Do not check your phone. Simply stand up and move into your day as the sovereign. You are no longer practicing silent abundance. You are the law. The gate is closed. The city is yours. Go now and reign in silence.